Live from KTVN Reno, you're watching 2 News at 5:30.
We need to acknowledge through the funding formula the differences of our students.
The state of Nevada overhauled the funding formula for schools. What does that mean? Find out in tonight's 2 News Big Story at 5:30. And Senate Bill 543 will not take effect until 2021, but it will change how the state funds school districts. I'm Landon Miller.
And I'm Kristen Remington. The goal was to make things more simple while giving extra funding for certain needs. Brandon Foose picks up the story for us live in the newsroom. And Brandon, talk about some of those changes.
Well, Kristen, this bill does a lot. It creates the Commission for School Funding. It's made up of 11 people who will oversee much of this process. It also restructures how funding for schools are kept and distributed. This is the current plan passed in 1967. It's called the Nevada Plan. There are 3 types of funds in this plan. Categorical funds for things like Zoom and Victory schools, the distributive school account, that's the base funding for students, and federal funds. This new plan, called the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan, they're keeping the federal funds separate because there are usually federal requirements that go along with spending that money. The rest of the money goes into one fund called the State Education Fund, and within that is the Education Stabilization Account. It's basically just a rainy day fund within that fund. Some Republicans are worried that rural districts will be hurt by this legislation.
It's helpful to the larger counties like Washoe County and Clark County. However, we're all working together as a body, as a legislature for all the people in our state.
The bill states that when the formula is implemented in 2021, school districts cannot receive less money than they did the year before, so districts won't be hurt in the transition year. There's also weighted per pupil funding in this change. That means smaller districts and schools get added money, cost of living is weighted in per pupil funding, and there's also added per pupil funding for gifted students, for at-risk students, for English learners, and for students with disabilities. The state superintendent says this funding model better fits the demographics of present day compared to 1967.
60% of our students free and reduced lunch. We have a large student population that speaks other languages, students with disabilities.
Governor Steve Sisolak says that the new formula will help, but there's a long way to go to fix education in Nevada. Washoe County School District Superintendent Tracy Davis is proud of her team and grateful to the governor for the, quote, increased support and resources for our students and schools, end quote. Covering the big story in the newsroom, Brandon Foose, 2 News.